Theodore Roosevelt, 1917, our 26th president, said, quote, "This actual world, a churchless community, a community where men have abandoned and scoffed at or ignored their Christian duties, is a community on the rapid downgrade." Warren G. Harding, our 29th president, 1920, said, "It is my conviction that the fundamental trouble with the people of the United States is that they have gotten too far away from the Almighty God." Calvin Coolidge, our 30th president, 1923, said, "The foundations of our society and our government rest so much on the teachings of the Bible that it would be difficult to support them if faith in these teachings would cease to be practically universal in our country." Franklin D. Roosevelt, October 6, 1935, said, quote, "We cannot read the history of our rise and development as a nation without reckoning with the place the Bible has occupied in shaping the advances of the Republic. Where we have been the truest and most consistent in obeying its precepts, we have attained the greatest measure of contentment and prosperity." Again, Franklin Roosevelt, 1935. 1943, President Hoover, in a joint statement with former First Ladies Mrs. Coolidge, Mrs. Roosevelt, Mrs. Taft, Mrs. Harrison, and Mrs. Cleveland, gave this statement, quote, "The whole inspiration for our civilization springs from the teachings of Christ and the lessons of the prophets. To read the Bible for these fundamentals is a necessity of American life." Harry Truman, our 33rd president, 1952, said this, quote, "The basis of our Bill of Rights comes from the teachings we get from Exodus and St. Matthew, from Isaiah and St. Paul. I don't think we emphasize that enough these days. If we don't have a proper fundamental moral background, we will finally end up with a government which does not believe in rights for anyone but the state." Profound. That was Harry Truman, 1952. Charles Malik was our ambassador to the United Nations from Lebanon, and the president of the UN General Assembly in 1958 made this statement, 1958. "Whoever tries to conceive the American word without taking full account of the suffering and love and salvation of Christ is only dreaming. I know how embarrassing this matter is to politicians, bureaucrats, businessmen, and cynics, but whatever these honored men think, the irrefutable truth is that the soul of America is at its best and highest Christian." That was the UN ambassador and president of the UN General Assembly in 1958. Now, Ronald Reagan, our 40th president, 1984, said, "The frustrating thing is that those who are attacking religion claim they are doing it in the name of tolerance, freedom, and open-mindedness. Question: isn't the real truth that they are intolerant of religion? They refuse to tolerate its importance in our lives," unquote. Ronald Reagan, 1984. Now, I point out these quotes from our history. Could read volumes and volumes of quotes, basically along the same lines. Not trying to push Christian religion on anyone, but just so that people understand where we came from. It's incredible the amount of ignorance on the basis of this nation, the foundation of this nation. Let me go to some of our founders directly. Sam Adams. He was called back at that time by those who knew and knew well the father of the American Revolution. Samuel Adams was a signer of the Declaration of Independence. In the will of Samuel Adams, he says this: "I recommend my soul to that Almighty Being who gave it, and my body I commit to the dust, relying upon the merits of Jesus Christ for a pardon of all my sins." That was the father of the American Revolution, Samuel Adams. In a letter written by Charles Carroll to Charles Wharton, Charles Carroll was a signer of the Declaration of Independence, one of the 56. He said, On the mercy of my Redeemer I rely for salvation, and on his merits, not on the works I've done in obedience to his precepts. William Cushing was the first associate justice appointed by George Washington to the Supreme Court. William Cushing in his will said, "Sensible of my mortality, but being of sound mind, after recommending my soul to Almighty God through the merits of my Redeemer and my body to the earth." John Dickinson was also a signer of the Constitution. In his will, he said, "Rendering thanks to my Creator for my existence and station among his works, for my birth in a country enlightened by the gospel and enjoying freedom, and for all his other kindnesses, to him I resign myself, humbly confiding in his goodness and in his mercy through Jesus Christ for the events of eternity." Again, John Dickinson, signer of the Declaration of Independence. John Hancock, we know, signed the Declaration larger than anyone else, president of the Continental Congress in 1776 when the Declaration of Independence was signed and made public. In his will, he said, "I, John Hancock, being advanced in years and being of perfect mind and memory, thanks be given to God, therefore calling to mind the mortality of my body and knowing it is appointed for all men once to die," Hebrews 9:27, "do make and ordain this my last will and testament. Principally and first of all, I give